A very good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to the second half of day two of our International Webinar 2020, hosted by the Electronics and Communications Department of University College of Engineering, Trivandrum. Before we move on to the next speaker, I would like to thank everyone for being here. We all know the past couple of months has been a struggle for everyone around the world, and I'm actually glad for a lot of people being here. My name is Ritvik Noya, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the event once again. Thank you all for the organizing team members for making this happen, and thank you, Aditi, for taking over the first session. First, let me thank Dr. E. Aplas, sir, for that wonderful class on 3D printing. It was truly some great points that you pointed out. Moving on to the second half of the day, we have Dr. Yamuna K. Murthy, Department of Technical Education, Government of Kerala, India, a PhD holder in the field of energy efficiency and cognitive radio networks. And she's an embedded systems developer. She was an embedded systems developer where she worked at Wipro Technologies, later then switching on to teaching. An avid follower of the advancements of electronic field, she has published more than 10 international scientific journal articles and is well into the research of cognitive radios, machine learning, and wireless communications. Now she currently works as a lecturer in Polytechnic with Department of Technical Education, Government of Kerala. Today, we shall dive into the realm of cognitive radios and how to be catapulted towards the 5G and beyond with Dr. Yamuna. We hope everyone's ready for the talk. And with that, I hand the session to you, ma'am. Welcome to International Webinar 2020.
Thank you. Thank you for the generous introduction you have given right now. Okay, let me first thank the organizing committee of University College Karivattam for giving me such a wonderful opportunity to be a part of International Seminar Webinar 2020. Particularly the coordinator, Professor Simi, who extended an invitation to me. Yeah, that's all. Before I get on to the, is it time for me to start actually the presentation? Yeah, okay.
Yes, ma'am, you can take it.
So I know this is a tough time for both the speaker and the audience because it's an afternoon session and you must ideally be taking an afternoon siesta after the lunch, particularly in this COVID lockdown period. So it's a challenge for me to keep you awake throughout the session, and I will do my level best to keep you awake. Okay, so let's start the session. I'm going to present it. Are the slides visible? Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, they're visible.
Is it truly slides visible and I'm audible as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the topic of the discussion for today is cognitive radios and how they can be catapulted towards 5G and beyond. That's the topic of discussion for today. And actually, one way or other, we are all reaping the benefits of wireless progress in wireless communication because we are all sitting from different places across the globe, and still we feel we are together just because wireless communication has evolved so much. And I'm just a child who's looking into the deepest, trenches of the ocean of wireless communication. So I'll begin with the overview today. Evolution of wireless communication is the first session, followed by visions about 5G. Then we'll be slowly going to the key enablers of 5G. Then my favorite topic, introduction to cognitive radio. And next is cognitive radio as a promising solution as we always thought about it. Then the future challenges in taking 5G, in catapulting 5G cognitive radio towards 5G. Then lastly, we have conclusion. So this is 5G. Even a 5-year-old kid can say what 5G is. It has become so much a familiar word among us. Everyone, everywhere is talking about 5G, the connectivity issue, bandwidth. Particularly the last 4 or 5 months have seen an enormous usage of these words. And this girl who is running, even her shoes are connected to the entire world. The industry, homes, agriculture, hospital, everything, every sector you see it is connected. So we are all behind ubiquitous connectivity. Every time, everywhere connectivity is what 5G offers us. In a technical point of view, it offers greater capacity and higher data speeds. than the previous generation, which is a long-term evolution. LTE, it's short name, and that is actually a 4G standard right now where we are. And 5G promises ultra low latency and ultra high reliability. Latency is the time from the word itself. It is very clear. It's a speed. It's a notation, or it designates somewhat about the speed. And reliability is that you want your data to be reached to the destination without any tampering. So that is a reliability aspect of it. So a 5G communication, in the very superfluous manner, you can say 5G is like that. But is 5G just that alone? No, so many other things are integrated into the concepts of 5G. So many other things have evolved as a part of 5G, unlike the previous generations. And we will get into those details in a shorter while. In order to completely appreciate the developments of 5G, we have to just surf through the previous generations. And they are designated as 1G, 2G, 3G, as you know. And every generation represents a set of technological standards, a technological mobile wireless standards. And when you step from the previous G to the successive G, you will see a big amount of leap or heading forward in terms of its technological specifications. Right from 1G, which was the first generation wireless network, it was particularly designed for carrying voice service only, and it was the only one which was based on analog techniques. Analog-based protocols was a key aspect of first generation, and you can see a boy, a person who is trying hard to get up. Then coming to second generation, is designed for voice, but still some form of data connectivity. The data services were integrated into it, and services like SMS, then web browsing, email, such sort of things were also embedded into the second generation networks, and they had improved coverage and capacity, and they had a speed of the order of hundreds of kilobits per second, which we will laugh at today. And the standards which were used were GSM, CDMA, then edge technology. And sometimes you have seen in some literature it is being quoted as 2.9G, etc. Then there was regarding second generation. I remember it existed during the decade 1990 to 2000. Then came the third generation network, the next decade. And that was designed for voice with some data. Some technological modifications were made in order to carry data as well. So some privilege, some preference to data was also given in the case of 3G networks. And you could now upload and download multimedia, you could stream multimedia, you could do texting, you could avail internet. All these facilities were incorporated in the third generation networks. And it was the first mobile broadband. Please remember, except 1G, other generations are all fully digital. Now the boy has started running. Now comes the fourth generation network. It is all everywhere, every time connectivity, all time, every place connectivity. And the best part of it, or the most interesting part of it, is it is not primarily designed for voice, but for data. It is basically an IP-based protocol, which is running the 4G standard. And it is a true mobile broadband connectivity, which is being offered by 4G. And the peak user speeds could raise up to 150 megabits per second, but I don't think anybody would have availed such a speed. But it's a theoretical limit. Practically, it will be much less than this. So these are all about the various generations we have so far, and we are in the verge of going to 5G. We are still in 4G, especially we, particularly Indians. So many other companies are coming forward to bring in to provide 5G services all throughout India, but still we are availing 4G services only. Then, having said all this, we have to see how 5G is going to be a revolutionary technique in the realm of wireless communication. Let's see, 5G vision. So, vision is specified in terms of some of the parameters, performance parameters, and key efficiency indicators. And in addition to that, you can see a very beautiful picture in the bottom corner. Can you guess what it is? Can you make something out of it? Okay, keep that with you. We will come to that later. So what I'm telling is this pictorial representation is a very big fact of 5G and any other developmental design for that matter. And now in future designs should always take into account of this aspect, this particular aspect. Without this particular aspect, nothing is going to happen in the future. And we will come to this later after 2-3 slides. So let's get on to what performance parameters are. So these are the performance parameters starting from throughput, latency, network densification, energy efficiency, traffic volume density, and mobility. Out of these, people who are already familiar with some form of wireless communication topics, they know what throughput is and latency is. Throughput is the data rate achieved, and the latency is the time delay. So these, from a user perspective, also a very naive user who doesn't know anything about communication and all can even understand what this throughput is, what this latency is. What is this network densification? Network densification was never a parameter of importance in 4G. Energy efficiency, okay, somewhat, but not a paramount factor. Again, traffic volume density, mobility, to some extent it was considered in previous generations as well. But these three parameters have evolved as a new parameter for specifying the standards of specifying the quality of the 5G: network densification, energy efficiency, and traffic volume density. Let us see what the parametrical values are. Throughput is of the order of 10 gigabits per second. Please note that it is the experience to user data rate. Latency is of the order of 2 to 5 milliseconds, very small latency. Network densification, see, this is what speaks for the connectivity of devices. Your watch is smart, your specs is smart, your shoe is smart, your what else is not smart. So you have to accommodate these many million connections per square kilometer. And interestingly, 5G has to support 100 million connections per square kilometer. Energy efficiency is another key parameter. And whatever it is a very complicated term, but usually it is specified in terms of battery life in order to make the things very compact and user friendly. That is comprehensible to the user. I mean, it is specified in terms of battery life, and whatever battery longevity you are getting for this particular generation for 5G, the same handset should give you 10 times better energy efficiency or 10 times better usage of your battery. Then comes traffic volume density. It is tens of terabits per second per kilometer, and mobility support is more than 500 kilometers per hour. So in the future, now you have something called bullet trains and all. In the future, if you want to become more and more fast, then also 5G supports you so well. Then, in addition to the performance parameters, we have three key efficiency indicators. So however large or however superior your performance is, there is no point in talking about performance alone. Efficiency, the system has to be very efficient, otherwise there is no point. And 5G has come up with three efficiency parameters, starting from spectrum efficiency, energy efficiency, and cost efficiency. Spectrum efficiency is already a non-term, even energy efficiency is already known. Cost efficiency, to some extent, you can make out what this cost efficiency is. Spectrum efficiency is the usage of spectrum in the most efficient manner, or in other words, it is a number of bits transmitted per bandwidth for a given cell. And so it's unit, from the unit you can actually make out the definition. Bits per second per hertz per cell is the unit of spectrum efficiency, and energy efficiency is bits per joule. Energy efficiency, because it is a number of bits transmitted per unit amount of energy, and cost efficiency is number of bits transmitted per unit cost. So there is the huge competition among the network providers, network operators, to make the cost as least as possible. In that aspect, cost efficiency has become a very important parameter of huge importance. Then go back to the old slide where there was a picture of a boy. The globe was the boy who was using a mobile phone. Let me take you to the picture actually. This was the picture in that you can see the globe as a boy, the earth as a boy, and who is using a mobile phone in his hand. From his hairs, so what is getting released? Fumes. What I could understand is fumes. Fumes are coming from his head. So this is nothing but the design which will tackle these problems is known as sustainable design. And I'm a huge fan of sustainability. My thesis was also centered so much around the sustainability features. So sustainability has evolved as such a big design parameter for the 5G. So the usage of mobile phones, the significant environment impacts due to the mobile phones is very huge. And due to billions and trillions of connected devices around you, you are actually contributing so much, contributing in the sense, in the negative sense, to the environmental pollution. And this problem has to be aggressively addressed by certain strategies. And the set of strategies are known as sustainable development. You remember in the last year, during the last year, there were floods also in almost all portions of Kerala. And in one of the studies which were presented, they actually emphasized on the importance of sustainable design. Whether it is in the field of mechanical, it's in the field of civil, or everywhere, people are talking about sustainable design. Sustainability, I would like to dedicate a few seconds regarding sustainable design, because in the future, if your design is not sustainable, if the design is not sustainable, there is no point in going to long distances, because future generations will totally be depleted of the resources. So sustainable development is a paradigm in which it's a design paradigm in which the current resources are used to the maximum possible extent, and with a judicious mind, such that the resources for the future are not jeopardized. That is the concept of sustainable development. And regarding the energy consumption of the fuels, the energy consumption of mobile devices, it comes to 2 to 10%. ICT, information and communication technology, uses 2 to 10% of the total energy consumption in the world. And the carbon footprint of telecommunications is very huge. What is carbon footprint? Carbon footprint is the amount of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases which are liberated into the atmosphere, which are released into the atmosphere with the usage of mobile phones. And interestingly, one German researcher has come up with a point saying that if you use, that is just for your own understanding, if you use mobile phone for 1 hour, for a year long usage of mobile phone for 1 hour, okay, per day is equal, the carbon footprint of that particular usage is equivalent to the carbon footprint which is given by a flight which to make 2 round trips between London and Glasgow. So that amount of carbon dioxide gases are being released by your mobile equipment. And apart from all these things, the health hazards due to electromagnetic waves is another problem of concern if you are not giving enough focus to sustainable design. So 5G has given a very huge importance to the sustainable aspects of design. So this is in a nutshell. Forget about all the things what we have discussed. Just focus on this flower, a beautiful flower. What you can see, it has got 3 green leaves and 6 petals. And these 6 petals represent each of the parameters what we have discussed. User experience, you can read those parameters actually. And in this flower, you can actually compare it with the 4G standards as well. What is being painted in yellow color corresponds to 4G, and what is being painted in an orange color corresponds to 5G. For example, if you take end-to-end latency in terms of milliseconds, we have seen that it is 2 to 5 milliseconds for 5G, that you can verify, and for 4G it is very less, of the order of maybe 10 or less, 10 milliseconds or less. So this is a comparison, and the green leaves indicates that. And you can see observe one very interesting thing. What I observed is that, see, in the case of traffic volume density, you can see a very huge variation between the previous generation, that between 4G and 5G, you can see a very huge variation. And the leaves are all green, which stands for actually green design. Particularly this factor, energy efficiency, speaks of sustainable design. So in a nutshell, this is 5G. This is what 5G means. When you think of 5G technologically, this figure should come to your mind, and you should be able to connect it. All your attempts will be to achieve these performance parameters and energy efficiency parameters, key parameters, while maintaining the sustainability aspects. Okay, so we are going to the next section, that is key enablers of 5G. For well said, these are the parameters required for 5G. So how can you actually attain those parameters? That is the question. Is the current technological advancement good enough for providing 5G standards? That's the question among wireless researchers. And to that question, the answer is we have to go a long way before attaining the 5G standards. So see, these enabling technologies, so many enabling technologies, you can see maybe 8 here, and all these converge together to give the 5G services in terms of performance parameters and efficiency parameters. And the enabling technologies are ultra dense networking, novel multiple access techniques, spectrum sharing, massive MIMO, millimeter wave communication, semiconductor technologies, antenna array beamforming, full and or flexible duplex connections. So these are the enabling technologies. We are already familiar with, I think, massive MIMO. MIMO was a technology in the previous Gs also. Then semiconductor technologies are always there. Antenna beamforming technology was also a technology well in practice already. Full duplex and flexible duplex technologies were already in practice. Multiple access were already in practice, but novel multiple access, so many other technologies have evolved. Spectrum sharing was there. Then ultra dense networking is on its way, and millimeter wave communication is something which was academically, some form of research has gone into this, but let us see what each technology means to 5G. So we will start with a heterogeneous network. That is the first point. That is very dense networks. Very dense networks are implemented by heterogeneous networks. So this term is a little more technical term. So I gave that heterogeneous network. And as the name implies, it is a network which is heterogeneous in nature. Heterogeneity means it accommodates not only entities of different characters. So also in headnets is heterogeneous networks are shortened by the name headnets. In a headnets, you can see different types of cells, starting from this picture I have shown in the right bottom shows that macro cell, microcell, femtocell, picocell, etc. All these cells are different in terms of their coverage and output power. And from the figure, it is very clear that femtocell and picocell are they have a very small coverage, but their output, the transmit power, the power consumption is also very less. So the power dissipated by them is also very less. So, but you will be thinking, okay, if the coverage is less, where they will find use? That will be natural. These femtocells and picocells can be placed indoors for your home, like how you install your Wi-Fi router and all. You can install these femtocells and picocells in home, and macrocells are outdoor actually. So the advantages of so now you can visualize of a larger cell area where so many smaller cells are installed here and there. So that means a larger connectivity. One cell, the coverage of one cell will be less. So many such cells are connected. That means you are covering a large area. So that is advantage. To point out 2-3 advantages, I can say frequency reuse. Frequency reuse is that suppose you are using a frequency within a cell, the same frequency can be used in another cell. That's not a problem. But when it comes, that is possible. Frequency reuse is very much possible in the case of small cells. But when it comes to the case of huge cells, frequency reuse may not be possible. So that is one advantage of headnets. Then lesser number of users per cell results in lesser conflicts between the users and lower power consumption. These are the major advantages. Then coming to the challenges, as I already mentioned, some of the cells can be placed indoor. It doesn't require the involvement of a network operator, but he has to have some controlling mechanism over these cells, installed cells also. Otherwise, nothing would happen. He's a regulator. So this creates problem for network management, traffic management, radio resources management, etc. To point out 2-3 challenges, we can say frequent handovers are necessary. Why frequent handovers? You are moving traveling between two places A and B. Maybe if such heterogeneous or small cells are there, you may have to cross 2-3 cells in a stretch for a short distance. So frequent handovers are a problem. So every handover is a complicated process. So many protocols are involved in it. So every handover, then cell interference is another another problem. Between cells, there will be interference. Cell edge problem will be there. Then less control for the network operators, increased complexity and difficult to manage. So these are all the problems and the challenges of heterogeneous network. But remember, to provide ubiquitous connectivity, there is no other method but to work on all these things. Next comes the massive MIMOs. Before that, I would like to say a few words about MIMOs. For those who are not familiar with the concepts of MIMO, I know this is a mixed audience who is sitting in front of this. So MIMO means multiple input and multiple output. As I think most of you will be familiar with the concept of diversity. Diversity technique is a technique of pursuing a reliable communication through following different radio paths. So also you have different diversity techniques, time, day, temporal diversity, then frequency diversity, then spatial diversity is another diversity. And this form of spatial diversity is attained by MIMO channels. Instead of sending through one antenna and receiving through another antenna, MIMO techniques always uses a multiple number of antennas at the receivers and at the transmitter side and the receiver side, and they provide a spatial diversity by a technique called beamforming. Their beamforming beamforming pattern will so be adjusted that there is negligible interference between the signals transmitted through the radio paths. So this is the crux of MIMOs. And when it comes to massive MIMOs, so this is the pictorial representation. Massive MIMOs means instead of antenna, you have antenna arrays. These are digitally controllable antenna arrays, and you can tilt it, you can rotate it, you can do anything on it. You can so many things on it. And these have the advantages are greater reliability, spectral efficiency, energy efficiency, then reduced noise and fading effect. I think fading effect most of you will be knowing. Less intra-cell interference. If I go on explaining each of the term, it will take so much time. And fading effect, I assume fading and all is a term which is known to almost all, for the time being at least. Okay, then disadvantages include increased cost of hardware, and a good knowledge of the uplink and downlink is also required. So these are the disadvantages of massive MIMO, because channel estimation is a task which is required in whatever it is, whether it is MIMO or massive MIMO. Channel estimation is a crucial task in the case. Then comes access technologies. As you know, access technologies is how new user can access a given channel. That is what is meant by access technologies. And you are familiar with so many access technologies so far. For example, PDMA is an access technology. Then FDMA. Then came OFDMA as not OFDM. OFDMA is an access technology where the users, the subcarriers of the OFDM subcarriers represent orthogonal carriers, and the user data can be placed. Can be multiple users or different data users also, but it is an orthogonal. The important point about all these multiple access techniques is that they are all orthogonal in nature. Orthogonal means causing, for the time being, just understand that it causes zero interference. A lot of mathematical stuff goes into this. Orthogonality principle is altogether a different mathematical complex concept, but remember, being orthogonal means being orthogonal, doesn't no interference at all, no connection at all. So in contrast to the orthogonality principle was such a celebrated principle for communication engineers and researchers, because through orthogonality they could do a lot of things. But recently another technology which is not orthogonal in nature, non-orthogonal multiplexers came into the picture, and he is now ruling the whole domain. And NOMA is supposed to be a candidate for SPI. NOMA is non-orthogonal multiple access, and interestingly, this is not an orthogonal multiple access, whereas it is non-orthogonal. And the most important feature of NOMA is that those who are already aware about TDMA and FDMA, how the assignment of users with respect to time and frequency is done, you know. In TDMA, for example, I can explain about TDMA, where user 1 is allocated in one time slot, user 2 is allocated in another time slot, such that there is no overlap between them. Total orthogonality feature. In FDMA also the same technique, but in different frequency bands. See here in NOMA, the same frequency band, the same spatial domain, the same time domain also. The users are stacked one above the other, as shown in the figure. But you can see a very crucial difference. They are assigned different power levels. So it is a power domain multiplexing technique. Please note, it's a power domain multiplexing technique where users are identified through the power assigned to them. Is it such an easy task for the receiver to decode which user is this one and which user is that one? No. You have to do processes related to that in the transmitter and the receiver. Superposition coding is one thing that is done at the transmitter for assigning various powers to users, and you have to carry out the reverse process also in order to retrieve the signal of user 1. You retrieve the data of user 2 also. You have to do the reverse process, that is through successive interference cancellation in the receiver. So this is in a nutshell about NOMA, and the advantages are you are serving so many multiple users on the same frequency. There is no wastage of time. There is no wastage of frequency time. Every time you are assigning so many number of users, every frequency band it is occupied by some users. So there is no queuing for the users. They are all the time users. So multiple number of users are being serviced simultaneously. So also massive connectivity, lower latency, better QoS to all the users. Not better QoS, it is QoS to all. That is fairness to users. Using flexible power control algorithms, you have to have power control algorithm because power is the key word here, and increased SLH throughput and better user experience at cell edges. And recently, a very deadly combination has come into picture, that is MIMO plus NOMA. That is supposed to be a revolutionizing combination and amalgamation. So I'm not getting into the details anyway. The limitation, every advantage has equal 2 or 3, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Similarly, every advantage has got a limitation also. So it is always these limitations which give ample number of opportunities to the researchers to exist and go on. So limitations include complexity in the receiver due to decoding at the receiver. Obviously, because you are doing something at the transmitter and something which is again reverse process at the receiver. It's not very simple as in the case of FDMA or TDMA. Complexity always calls for a lot of computational cost and energy consumption. Another thing is that the error is somewhat propagative in nature because so many users are assigned the same band as in the same time. It is somewhat propagative in nature. Then the channel gain difference between the users, very important point. Channel gain difference between the users. User should be completely differentiable from the previous user. That is another problem. Then each user is required to give channel gain information back to the base feedback. That is pure feedback is always a region of research, an area of rigorous research for communication engineers. Feedback, channel estimation, involving rigorous mathematical stuffs and all. So this feedback, giving feedback, channel estimation and giving feedback is truly a challenging area for implementing this scheme. But still NOMA is revolutionizing other access technologies. Some people who are interested in NOMA can dedicate their time for pursuing research in NOMA. Then another thing is device-to-device communication. Device-to-device communication, I don't consider as a huge pillar technology, but I would like to say it is a domain technology. It's not a vertical technology because it is a communication where devices communicate with each other at the time of congestion only or at cell edges where the connectivity is poor, leading to ad hoc network. Relays are example for that, and advantages is that offloading backhaul network, extending cellular coverage, reduced battery consumption, reliable communication. These are all the advantages of device to D2D. Some books you have seen D2D communication, device to device. A device, no base station in between devices. That is how to understand about this concept. Usually, when a device, two mobile phones sitting very near to each other, they want to communicate. The communication has to go through a base station. When D2D communication evolves, protocols for D2D communication evolves, then no base station needed. He can communicate, but only under certain circumstances. So that is one thing that you have to think about device to communication. So many issues in establishing ad hoc networks and all. Managing ad hoc networks itself is a big area of research and it's a challenging area as well. So that is going to be a challenging part of it. The challenges include single hop. Okay, so single hop and multi hop are for example, suppose a mobile phone wants to communicate. Mobile phone A wants to communicate to mobile phone C, but he has to take the service from B. So it is a multi hop transmission system. So in a multi-hop transmission system, sometimes B's participation is taken without the knowledge of B. So in such cases, B's security will be affected. So device-to-device communication, the major challenge is to ensure the security of all the participating devices and trust between the devices. It is always a problem for device-to-device communication. Then in-band interference, intra-cell interference. Another important thing is that your device will be searching for some ad hoc mobile devices or smart device around you, and searching a device or searching a network is really a power consuming task. So in that aspect, you have to come up with some energy efficient device discovery protocols, because even if your mobile phone is searching for Wi-Fi, you are in a place there is very poor Wi-Fi connectivity, and if your device is searching for Wi-Fi, most of you would have noticed that your battery is draining very fastly. So this is because device discovery wireless network discovery is a process which consumes a lot of power. Then next is penalty and incentive, and that is for, I don't want to get into much details because incentive based communication is always there in cooperative devices. So much more to say about this. I don't want to get into that. Then comes the ultra lean design. Ultra lean design is a design paradigm where you suppress, usually in wireless communication, we will be using some routine signals in the form of synchronous signals and pilot signals. Some signals are always awake. So such signals can be in future design, the contribution or the role of such signals can be decreased to a certain extent, such that the network parameter, network QoS is not affected, quality of service is not affected. And such a design where always on signals are suppressed to a bare minimum to achieve energy efficiency is known as an ultra lean design, and reduce network transition without affecting user data delivery. The advantages is that improved mobility support, increased throughput and energy saving. Challenges, backward compatibility for low frequency bands. That actually connects to 5G migration. For 5G migration, if you are using ultra-lean design, then you have to do with 4G networks as well. Then another thing is millimeter wave technology. Millimeter technology is also a revolutionizing technology, and this is actually the true solution for the energy congestion, spectrum congestion problem. As you all know, the mobile devices are increasing day by day in many-fold times. But the bandwidth remains. Bandwidth is a resource, or the electromagnetic spectrum is a natural resource which is limited in. It's a non-replenishable resource which is limited in nature, and all the resources which have been assigned to communications is being depleted. So my millimeter wave technology has come as a solution to this problem. It is an ultra high frequency band which ranges from 30 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz. And 5G makes use of a little part of the spectrum also. The advantage is that when you switch to high frequency communication, naturally the advantage is very high data rate, ultra high capacity, very large bandwidth, and very low latency. These are all connected. If you get one, you can fill other blanks as well. High data rate, ultra high capacity, very large bandwidth, and very low latency, all these are connected. The challenge is that it's a short wave. High frequency means short wave. Good attenuation characteristics. It gets attenuated very fast. High oxygen absorption, high atmospheric attenuation. So what will happen? Naturally, the range will be very less. Range will be very poor. So that is one particular. So that, see how beautifully the technologies are converging. We spoke of heterogeneous networks where we thought of installing cells, small cells here and there in order to get a better coverage. So when MM waves are integrated, wave technology to be integrated in its fullest extent needs small cells like this. Otherwise, what is the use? The coverage will be less in the case of wave technology. So you need heterogeneous networks. So that is the amalgamation of technologies. actually pushing up the 5G technology. So high absorption and atmospheric attenuation. Due to this, the signals get attenuated very fast. The coverage will be less, and the strength of the waves will also be less. Then another very important feature of this microwave is their line of sight propagation. This line of sight propagation is a very, and you have the first propagation defect what you study in your wireless communication is a line of propagation defect, where you get fading due to tall buildings and all. So the same thing happens in millimeter wave technology also. So these are the challenges. Then another important thing is spectrum sharing. Spectrum sharing is a very important aspect, and it is also, I would say, it is the most important technology that will take future generations ahead. Because without sharing, see, the natural resources are all getting depleted. Their supply is limited and the demand is more. What is the only one of the out of the various solutions? What is the one solution you will naturally think of? Share it. Share, like you establish a covalent bond. You as well as me, both of us will be happy. So spectrum sharing is a sharing of the same frequency band amongst multiple users of different priorities without impeding one another. So in establishing covalent bond also, you are not disturbing anyone. You are happy. Both of it is a symbiotic relationship. Likewise, sharing a spectrum is also a symbiotic relationship where both the parties get benefited. But see that it is easily said, but the challenges are many. So you have to, if you are getting rid of these challenges or getting rid of the problems one by one, then spectrum sharing will highlight itself as the most promising technique for 5G. And it is the one which is playing a key role in migration from 4G to 5G, because basically the bands involved in 5G will be different from those involved in 4G. So spectrum-wise sharing has to happen. The reverse also. So spectrum sharing is a very important aspect of 5G. And to this end also, I would like to say about about one of my favorite topics, that is cognitive radio, who has already proved to be a master in or expert in spectrum sharing. Or else, like, we can say like this, it has already inbuilt spectrum sharing features, or else it is a technology which is born and grown up on the features of spectrum sharing. So in the next session, I would like to talk a few words about cognitive radio, but to cover this session, I need to speak a little more about 5G. After that, we will get on to cognitive radio. So spectrum allocation in 5G, you have to know what is the spectral bands allocated for 5G. 3 bands actually, very low, low, high, and very high. Low is below 1 gigahertz, 700 megahertz, and it enables 5G coverage in wide areas, and deep indoor coverage is given. Because it's a relatively low frequency, coverage will be larger. But there is always between high frequency and low frequency. What is the compromise happening? What is the compromise happening between a low frequency in terms of frequency? The compromise is between coverage and speed. The compromise is between coverage and speed. You have better coverage for lower frequencies, but faster, the speed is less. So, so the low frequency spectrum is of that sort. Next comes a high, and it is below 6 Hz, and to be very precise, at 3.4 gigahertz to 3.8 gigahertz. And it is the one which is actually the key player of these things, provides the necessary capacity to support numerous connected devices and ensure fairly high speed for concurrently connected devices. And the third comes, it is the best compromise between capacity and coverage. As I already told, the first one compromises capacity or fastness in terms of coverage. The second one is a compromise between capacity and coverage. And the last one, which is very high, which is about 24 gigahertz, that we have actually reached the spectrum of milliwave spectrum. So ultra high capacity and very low latency and small coverage, through the densification of networks and all, 5G is supposed to be rolled out in this band actually. So the proposal is that 5G needs to be, but some integration works, migration works are already going on in many countries, as you know, around the news. So this is a pictorial representation of the spectrum allocation in 5G. You can just see how it is done. Yeah, now actually just go back and think about the topic of this, the name of this topic of the presentation is cognitive radios, how it is boosting 5G. So that is the topic. So we have to just see whether for cognitive radio will help towards reaching, will help this technology to reach 5G in the best, shortest route possible. So that's a question right now. So we have to see whether it is a promising solution to 5G first. The next slides, upcoming slides, actually discuss about the cognitive radio technology. So cognitive radio is a new 5G radio. As you can see in the slide, there is a brain which is sitting there. So cognitive radio is a brainier radio, and we will get into the details of cognitive radio. And basically, this triggers a little bit of sentiment in me because it was my PhD thesis topic. I'm a great fan of cognitive radio, and takes back to me older memories during the PhD days. So cognitive radio is a radio that is aware of its. Hope you are actually the same page as that of mine. Yeah, cognitive radio is a radio that is aware of its surroundings and adapts intelligently. Intelligent, that is a key word, aware and intelligence. And it senses, monitors, and detects the conditions of operating environment and dynamically configures its parameters to match the operating. Dynamic configuration of parameters. A person who is dynamic in nature, he can always mold himself. He is very flexible. He is a very flexible person. And cognitive radio is such a very flexible person who can adapt himself to the surroundings around him. And it addresses the spectrum congestion problem. See, spectrum congestion is the root cause of all these problems, whether it is 5G or 4G. It's a spectral congestion problem, which is the basic cause. So cognitive radio addresses, and cognitive radio is actually a brain product of a person by name Mottola, and that was in 2000 when he produced his PhD thesis. He actually proposed on particular radio called cognitive radio, which can actually alleviate the spectral congestion problem. So the two key parameters or two features of cognitive radio is cognitive capability and reconfigurability. Cognitive capability, as you know, cognition means intelligence to awareness, and intelligence is to understand. It refers to the ability of radio technology to sense the information from its environment. And what do you mean by sensing the environment? He should understand where is there any chance for his own transmission? Is there any opportunity for him to transmit? Is there any opportunity for him to make successful transmission? So that is what he is always thinking about. So it identifies the portions of the spectrum that is unused or idle at a specific time of location. So when I say like this, it might not actually click to you. Actually, it might. Let me tell a few more words about this evolution of cognitive radio, and it was based on a report from Federal Communications Commission, FCC, regulatory authority, saying that we speak so much volumes about spectral congestion problem recently. The spectrum is very limited, spectrum is inadequate, so and so the talks are going on. But still, a lot of spectrum is unutilized or underutilized. So Mottola actually suggested cognitive radio from this, based on this report, and he thought, why not? See, the FCC, as per the reports of FCC actually reported that before digital transmissions started, some of the frequency bands were allocated to analog TV transmission, and after the advent of digital TV transmission, analog TV transmission bands are no more in use. So they are vacant bands. So why not use such vacant spaces here and there in order to support transmission? So that was a thinking process put forward by Mottola, and to some extent he was able to demonstrate it successfully also. So the basic operation of cognitive radio is based on spotting the vacant spaces around the device or around the base station. Is the basic task required out of a cognitive radio. So the sentence makes sense in that aspect. It identifies the portions of the spectrum that is unused or idle at a specific time or a location. We call the spaces as white spaces. Unutilized spaces are called white spaces, and underutilized spaces are called gray spaces. The next comes the reconfigurability aspect. The cognitive radio should, first of all, it should have cognitive capacity. The second thing is that it should be reconfigurable. What is reconfigurability? You are a reconfigurable person. Is that a compliment? To some extent, it is a compliment. Similarly, for some it is not. That is another thing. But reconfigurable means he will reconfigure himself. His parameters will get dynamically programmed for transmission and reception of varieties of frequencies using different transmission technologies supported by different hardware designs. See, so many things are coming. Easier said than done. But so many things are coming into picture. See, hardware design and all is a very crucial part. It's not very easy as you think. It's a very complex radio. It's complicated radio. Cognitive radio is a really complicated and complex stuff. But if you chew in bits and pieces, it will reveal some parts of it very slowly. That is where you should have patience. That's another thing. This is a pictorial representation of cognitive radio, and the first figure, it's the top figure shows, right top figure shows spectrum underutilization, a scenario where spectrum is being underutilized. The green bands show spectrum occupancy, and wherever there is no green fields, it shows less use of spectrum. So it shows less than 6% occupancy. Most of the spectrum are underutilized. So in such a case, what a cognitive radio does is he will do a dynamic spectrum allocation. Just monitor his surroundings and see what all bands are free, both in the temporal as well as the spatial domain. And whenever a band is free, a cognitive base station actually assigns that band to a cognitive user. So that is a key point of it. And the gray figure in the bottom shows the dynamic spectrum allocation. What you can say as dips are actually spectrum holes in the time as well as the frequency domain. And these are vacant, and if possible, you can make use of these these holes. And the fundamental elements as well as task aspects of cognitive radio is any cognitive radio consists of primary users and secondary users. The primary users are users who are already licensed to use a given spectrum, and secondary users are users who actually get into those spectral holes only in the absence of primary users. And fundamental aspects of spectrum, the cognitive radio includes spectrum sensing, spectrum decision, spectrum sharing, and spectrum mobility. See, spectrum sharing, as you know, is a very important feature of cognitive radio. And so also it will qualify, it's in the qualifying round. So this is a pictorial representation of the fundamental task of the cognitive radio. This is for your information, it's a cognitive radio network where you will be having a cognitive base station. And then you have a primary base station, which includes a primary, which serves a primary network. And you can see the association whenever primary user is absent, and if some secondary user needs spectrum, a cognitive radio base station can do all these stuffs and assign vacant spectrum if possible. And if this task goes in a cycle, and it is a very complex task, one by one, sequence after sequence. See, in a sequential manner, it has to go on in order to achieve the task. So fundamental task, a revisit of fundamental task in one or two sentences. Spectrum sensing is the process of identifying the vacant spaces in a given spectrum, as you have understood it right on the basis of the discussion so far. And the results of the spectrum sensing are then used for optimizing the sharing of the spectrum. So sensing is a process which is prior to sharing. Then comes sharing. Sharing is nothing but the usage of the same spectrum by more than one user with respect to frequency, time, and location. Here in a cognitive radio aspect, it is a sharing of the spectrum between the primary user and the secondary user. Next comes the spectrum decision. And decision is a capability to make decision or to select the best available spectrum to band to satisfy the secondary user QoS requirements. SU means secondary user, and QoS means quality of service. So you should, a cognitive radio base station, he should ensure the QoS of the secondary user only. But he should always is under the assurance that any harm to no harm to the primary user is made without causing harmful interference to the primary user. If a cognitive radio station takes all the frequency and assign it to the secondary user, will that be a fair task? No, because primary user is the one who is a licensed user. Then spectrum mobility. It refers to the process of placing user with a low priority to the next vacant channel whenever PU decides to peep into the channel. So these are the different areas of spectrum share in different ways. So also you can understand how big this area is, spectrum sharing, and I don't want to explain each one in detail, but the last one, which is a hierarchical method of spectrum sharing, is the one which is primarily adopted by the cognitive radios, but still I would say cognitive radio as a beam. In the case of constructing a building, you will be having pillars and beams. Pillars are the keys of support, and beams will be spanning across the pillars. So cognitive radio is one such technology which spans across all the technologies. We in the one of the previous slides, we have discussed certain technologies as key driving technologies 5G. So I like to call these technologies the pillar technology. And cognitive radio is a domain technology, a beam-like technology which spans across all these technologies. It can really make weddings with the underlying pillar technologies and result in much better performances. So in that aspect, cognitive radio is a very it's very sought after technique. So let's keep you awake, keep you focused while we are going so much into the cognitive radio paradigm. And again reminding you, I know this is a tough time for me as well as you. So again and again reminding you about the importance of the topic so that we are not getting defocused from the main goal. Okay, CRs may mainly use a hierarchical model which falls into 3 categories: underlay, overlay, and interweave. And one thing which I want to point here is that cognitive, when Maitola suggested or proposed cognitive radio, he visualized cognitive radio as a truly interweave radio, where only secondary users can make use of this spectrum only when a primary user is absent. So that is sensing also, whenever whoever has gone into the cognitive radio research, or whoever has read some topics regarding cognitive radio, they will be well aware of sensing. What this sensing is, they are all aware. It's a very basic fundamental task of cognitive radio. So when Maitola proposed cognitive radio, sensing was the preliminary and the most fundamental task of cognitive radio, because the results of sensing only decides the level of extent of sharing. So that is a cognitive radio. Cognitive radio user is called the secondary user actually. A secondary user can start his transmitter or continue transmitting only in the absence of a primary user. That was a notion at that time. But as technology evolved, other forms of spectrum sharing also evolved, and that was also equally applicable to the cognitive radio. Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay. Okay. At that time, when Maitola proposed it, it was interweave in nature. But as other strategies advanced, its overlay and underlay paradigm also evolved, and cognitive suited well with cognitive radio. And it was under the consensus that, or you can say like that, it's a sharing paradigm in which SUs and PUs coexisted with each other. But under the condition, under the agreement, or under the treaty that the QoS of primary user is in no way affected. QoS is no way affected. So for this sharing mechanism, there is no sensing required. But it is a very highly complicated process, because a lot of channel estimation, and I don't want to get into the details. It's very highly complicated stuff. Underlay and overlay mechanism. Yes, you can transmit simultaneously with PUs as long as the performance degradation does not occur in PUs. And the interweave mechanism is called the opportunistic access model, Opportunity access model means from the term itself, it is very clear. He is just like somebody is hiding behind the bush in order to get an opportunity. The moment he gets an opportunity, he jump forward, leap forward, and grab it. So that is what an interweave cognitive radio also does. Applications. These are all the applications. See, even though it is, I'll get into that part later. But so these are just understand that these are the applications. Okay. Now let's see whether it is the promise for 5G. We have been talking volumes and volumes regarding cognitive radio. Cognitive radio is this, cognitive radio is that. All these things we have been talking, and now the question is it a suitable candidate for 5G? So let's get into that. The inherent features, because of its inherent features, cognitive potential reconfigurability and hence transmission parameters can be adjusted. Is a feature which will be highly required by future, not only 5G but any other future networks for that matter. I think I'm running out of time. Okay, I'll make it very short. Then other features include spectrum sensing, management, mobility, and sharing. These are the fundamental tasks. All these find applications in or its own value in 5G. Then well-defined spectrum handover procedure, cooperation among cognitive nodes. All these things. Variety of spectrum sharing approaches like spectrum trading, spectrum leasing, spectrum. If I want to tell about all these things, it might take another 1 more hour. So I don't want to get into spectrum trading. Is just the buying and selling of spectrum, and spectrum leasing is another technique of spectrum sharing. And anybody who is interested in spectrum sharing or cognitive radio stuff or 5G stuff or later get into. For the time being, just pass these terms overhead. Just do this. Multi-tier spectrum trading and spectrum leasing. And next is the cross-layer implementation of spectrum sharing. When you say cross-layer implementation, see, like your OSI model, wireless model is also a 5-layer structure which starts from the physical layer, then you have the MAC layer, then on the top of MAC layer you have network, transport, and application layer. So repairing one layer will not do the task. If you make a repair in the physical layer, that has to be the MAC layer has also be so adjusted so as to accommodate the changes in the physical layer. So in that aspect, cognitive radio, the literature have a lot of works have been demonstrated and successfully the cross-layer implementations of these things in cognitive radio. So because of this aspect, this is a very good candidate. Then spectrum access for dynamic sharing is also there. Dynamic sharing is not like static sharing. It's a very dynamic thing. A lot of mathematical stuff, mathematical tools, algorithms. So people who are very good in algorithm, mathematical framing, people who are basically interested in these stuffs can contribute to this field. And a lot of works are already there in literature. And DCR is another algorithm which is suitable for dynamic spectrum allocation. So people who are interested in framing algorithm, designing algorithm, and all can go into this field. Then introduction of eCRN based on spectrum aggregation is another topic, another technique which has evolved maybe within a span of 5 years. It's being portrayed in the figure, like the carriers are somewhat here and there, but you are accumulating chunks from here and there to make the transmission happen. That is another technology, spectrum aggregation. So spectrum aggregation has been done successfully with cognitive radio. Then advances in the sensing approaches, as I have told already, a student or a researcher or research scholar who is doing research in cognitive radio, or who is just browsing through literature for cognitive radio, he will be familiar with the sensing approaches, starting from this very basic way of sensing, that is energy sensing, master filter sensing, cyclostation. All these fundamental protocols are there. But we have advanced so much from these fundamental protocols to the advanced levels like full duplex spectrum sensing, spectrum database, based spectrum, compressive, prediction area, crowd sensing. So all these are evolutions or advancement of the fundamental sensing procedures, and that has taken the technology is a long way forward. Then it has an inherent support for energy design. So this was my this is actually energy efficient design in cognitive radio. And through a different sort-of-box modeling, I have given results that energy efficient, true energy efficient design is possible in a cognitive radio aided mobile communication network. So even I am a proof for that. So huge benefits in terms of achievable rates and power efficiency in CR and employing MIMO. So here we are talking about the amalgamation or the marriage wedding between technologies, how the tech, you know, compensating the gap between various technologies will take the underlying technology to a long distance, and features for adding security. It's already well in place for cognitive radios, and literature demonstrating that, citing that is already well in place. Sustainability of carrying multimedia traffic both in underlay CR and incorporated diversity. These are all, even though most of 80% of this might not make a sense to you at this point of time, I'm sure, but people who are already into wireless communication, it might stuck a little bit of spark in them. So I think that would actually see, I am actually during the tenure of my PhD, this is also only these sparks actually lit a whole room, a small lamp. So take this in that aspect. And so CR has met, it has passed the audition round, it has qualified. CR, it is a qualifying candidate or candidate who is liable to be eligible to be qualified as a candidate for 5G because of the following characteristics in a nutshell: interoperability, context awareness, learning ability, self-optimization, dynamic spectrum management, and self-healing properties of cognitive radio make it suitable for declaring itself as a candidate for 5G. So cognitive radio is truly a qualifier for 5G, and we are sure it will do its work when integrated when taken for 5G. It's already is cognitive radio. When you the references which I have quoted at the end of this talk, when you go through these references, you will truly understand. It's not just for a namesake what I said. It's real. Cognitive radios have played a real part in the building of this building, and the growth of such techniques. So, okay. So, lastly, it's a good spectrum sharing. Recent sensing paradigms such as crowd sensing, even though they are good already in place, but a lot of challenges. This this crowd sensing is some. If somebody is interested to and search about crowd sensing, that we don't have time to discuss what is crowd sensing in detail. But it's such a technology. Just remember, it's a technology which is notorious for its data. It's not that the data trust belief is not there. Data security is not there. Then with access technologies like NOMA, we have seen CR operating with other technologies like multiple access technologies like TDMA, then FDMA, OFDMA CR combination was a very sought after combination so far. But with the advent of NOMA, slowly this OFDMA technologies were pushed aside, and NOMA is taking up the position. So this integration will result in also maybe of research for people who are trying to pursue a research career in communication. Then it requires high novel transmission designs which are robust to CSI, channel state interference. Channel state interference is somewhat a technical term which will be known to people who are already in the field. It requires high computational power to implement real-time power allocation and successive interference cancellation algorithms. Physical layer security is another issue. When you join hands with, when CR join hands with millimeter wave technologies, it's yet another plethora of technology opportunities for those researchers, scholars, and researchers. Joined efficient rules and radio regulations for spectrum sharing and management. Then joined efficient rules and radio regulations for spectrum sharing and management, spectrum handoff procedures. Then miscellaneous to include it talks about this trade-off between various key parameters. See, I would like to say a few sentences about this also. Basically, however hard or however deep you go into one problem, it's basically an optimization problem and basically a trade-off problem. So, like I explained in the case of frequency bands, when you have a high frequency band, maybe you are okay with the capacity or speed or fastness, but what about the coverage? Which decreases. Similarly, such types of the type of trade-off always exists in an experimentation or research field. When you try to enhance one particular parameter, naturally the other side has to go on. Like a seesaw, it goes. There is no single technology we can enhance everything. Even if you speak volumes about its advantages and all, in one way it will be good, in another way it will be bad. So the research opportunities lies in how you safely play between these compromises. Is a research, it's a balance, it's a keeping equilibrium between these technologies. And when you integrate the technologies together, how well the system is holding on to its parameters, that is a key part of any research, what I have felt. And so also you will have so many trade-off issues to be worked on, like energy efficiency versus spectral efficiency. Spectral efficiency versus latency means if you try to increase the spectral efficiency of a particular technique, maybe you will have to compromise with its latency. If you try to increase the energy efficiency of a particular technique, maybe you will have to compromise with the throughput. So likewise, your design will always have some conflicting aspects to it. So one part of research is to be a compromise between these things. Then security issues, research allocation, optimization algorithms, people who are good in game theory, mathematics, etc. Then policy and regulations are coming up with business models, sustainability issues, computational methods, multi-layer optimization, integration of full deploy. These are all the miscellaneous issues, but what I have uh, compiled after going through so many works, recent works. So I think this finishes the challenge also. So as a takeaway of this presentation, I am concluding my topic. So future of 5G license spectrum sharing and flexibility. And I would like to visualize cognitive radio as a spanning technology which spans across almost all the basic pillars or the key enablers of 5G. So already proven to be a promising candidate to be for 5G. It has a hell lot of opportunities for researchers who are actually thinking of a career in or profession in research in wireless research. You will not be dissatisfied. You will not be. It will not be very tough for you to find a problem, because particularly because such an n number of technologies have emerged. They are all in the infancy stage. Much more to go towards to get into the 5G stage. So cognitive radio will always, I'm sure it will take a long way, a 5G to a long way, and it will leap over all the hurdles towards the ultimate goal. Thank you. Hope all of you had a very nice time so far. And now these are my references. It is based on the recent survey paper, which got released in January 2020. 5G technology towards dynamic spectrum sharing. It's a very good read through material, and first just go through and appreciate. You'll be able to appreciate the technological advancements that has happened in the last 1 year. It discusses a lot of papers which have got released in 2019. A lot of technologies, new technologies, technological advancement. Go through this paper if you find time. It's a nice paper. It's a study material also. Then other papers are like this. So mostly recent papers I have gone through. Anybody interested, you can mail me also, not a problem. In case yes, finishes my presentation, and if questions are welcome.
Okay, ma'am. Can we open up to questions and answers? Questions answer session right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so if anyone has any questions or queries regarding the session, please do ask. You can just unmute yourself, or you can put it down in the comment section. All right. Seems like everyone's doubts are cleared. All right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for that a wonderful class. Your words were really captivating. And moving on, it's an honor to be asked to give the vote of thanks to this event. I thank a strong group of webinar organizing committee for this. An event of the scale would not be possible at this hour of confusion and struggle without my team members, and thank you for them. Finally, to you guys who are attending the event, thank you for taking your time out. And I hope to see you all for day 3 of an international webinar 2020 by UCK. Have a good evening.
Thank you once again to all of you, for particularly the audience who have been patient enough to sit till the end. But in case if you have any questions after thinking about going over the topic again and again, please feel free to drop questions in my mail. Yeah, I will be more than happy to answer your questions. I can also go through some of the materials if you come up with your new questions that will give learning opportunity to me as well. Hope you enjoyed it, and at least some of you would find it useful for pursuing your research. Thank you so much.